Okay, so we've got four people. That's pretty good. I am recording, so I can post that for people that might have missed out. If you want to enable, make sure you're unmuted. Enable your video and your audio is fine with me because you may have questions for me. So I'm just going to start going down the study ideas for exam 2. Know the components of a mortgage. This is where I don't want to just lecture. I want you guys to talk to me and help me answer these questions. So what are the two big things you have to sign when you get a mortgage for your house? Somebody give me a test or something. I can't hear anybody.
Yeah, I can't. Can you hear me?
I got you now. Yeah.
Okay. Just
Okay.
making sure it was working. I can't remember two big things. This-
Okay. As long as I got some dialogue going on, I'm good with that.
I got you.
Uh, yeah. So I mean, you're the first thing you're going to sign is the promissory note,
Right.
right? We talked about it in class, and then once that's the basically you saying I'm going to borrow this money, and then from there you actually have to do in Tennessee we have what they call a deed of trust. So I'm trying to see what it. So that is where you actually mortgage the property. So you're getting a loan, you're signing the deed of trust, which allows the lender to put the lien against the property. So that's the mortgage part of the property or the transaction right there. Okay, so types of loans, we had government and versus conventional. What kind of loans do we have when it comes to government loans? Anybody? Appreciate Sam jumping in, but any rest of you guys is available at all?
Yeah, I've had a long day. I don't remember. I'm having a hard time thinking, so I don't count on me too much.
Yeah, it's all good, but it's all good. This is why I don't do these on Zoom because I end up just talking the whole time, and it's really not a review session. It's just a summary of the lectures, which I hate,
Uh,
which I hate. So maybe other. I don't know. I'm not getting any response from anybody else, so I don't know whether they're just waiting on the recording for later or what the deal is. So if that's the case, it's going to be really quick. All right. You got government and conventional loans. Government, you got FHA, VA, that type of stuff. Conventional, you've got conforming and non-conforming. Conforming being subject to Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae guidelines. Non-conforming, if the loan amount's too big, there can be a lot of reasons that it's not conforming loan. What documents would you sign when you guess we kind of already talked about that. And the note and the mortgage or the deed of trust. Okay. When a lender collects the mortgage payment on a monthly basis, they have principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. What do you remember the name of the account that they put the money into? Not the principal and interest, but they're going to hold on to the taxes and insurance for the year until the bills due. Remember what kind the name of the account is that they put that into?
is that just accrued?
Accrued, but the money actually comes in every month on the payment. They got to do something with that money, so they actually stick it in what they call an escrow account.
That's right.
How do you spell that one?
Escrow, ESCROW. Yeah, an escrow account. And we talked about the role of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and I just kind of talked about that just a minute ago. That was more, they're the ones that do the conforming. stuff. They set the appraisal forms and the closing forms and the debt to income ratios, and all of those different things are all set according to their underwriting guidelines. And then it conforms, if your loan conforms to those guidelines, excuse me, conforms to those guidelines, then it's a conforming loan. You get a better interest rate, that type of thing. If it's not, then it's a non-conforming loan. And usually the interest rate is higher. Everything is just not quite as good. So that's the best you can do if you have a conforming loan with Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae. That is usually the best interest rate that you can get on a mortgage. All right, let's see here. What else we got? So Fannie and Freddie don't actually make the loans, but they buy the loans. They operate we have the primary market where the loans are actually originated, and then we have the secondary market, and they both operate in the secondary market. All right, so if a loan is either guaranteed or insured by the government, then that's typically a government loan, and that can be FHA or VA. So a loan that is larger than what the standard conforming loan amount is, which I think is like 517,000 or something right now. If the loan is larger than that, then it would be considered a non-conforming loan, but also when its dollar amount is higher like that, it's considered what they call a jumbo loan.
And that was over 500,000. Is that what you
I
said?
think it's 517 or something like that is the loan limit.
Okay.
And then just understand again, FHA, look back in your notes and look at FHA versus VA and how they're either guaranteed or insured. One is with one is the other. I'm gonna let you do a little research and figure that out so I don't have to tell you everything here. Okay, so when loans are originated, you have a mortgage banker. You have either a mortgage banker or a mortgage broker involved. Um, and then how do they come up? Where do they make their money? I guess is where what we're looking for. They charge fees, and then of course they have interest on the loan. What would you say is probably the biggest amount of income for them?
Interest.
From an absolute dollar amount, yes, you're correct, but that takes time. When they do a new loan, they get to charge fees. So they have a loan origination fee or a funding fee or something along those lines, and then over time. So I would actually say it's probably both. When you turn over your money, if you're a broker or even a mortgage banker and you're selling your loan, if you can make one loan a month and make 1 or 2% on that loan, and you do it every month, that's 12 to 24% return on your money versus just holding the loan for a year, getting 6 or 7% interest. It's only 6 or 7% interest. So, especially for the people originating loans, turning the deals is can be very beneficial as well as the servicing of the loan. All right, let's see here. One of the alternatives we talked about for a buyer when they're buying a property, if they can put their down payment down, they can get the a loan that works out great, and then everything goes on being happy. But if they choose to do it differently, they can always give a down payment to the seller And if the seller is able, the seller can actually um, carry back basically carry the mortgage or act like the banker. So the payments would actually be made to the seller. And I'm not sure if we talked about that. That's either a seller financing or what they call a purchase money loan, or the owner carrying back a loan. Those all those kind of um, qualify under the qualifications of seller financing. All right, we talked about let's see here. And a portfolio lender. Okay, portfolio lender is when a portfolio holds the loan within, or excuse me, a lender holds the loan within their portfolio. So Tennessee Valley Federal Credit Union, if they do a 5 or 10 year real estate loan for an investment property or whatever, and they just hold it in the bank, and you make payments to Tennessee Valley, like we were talking about, then that's a portfolio loan. If you go get a 30-year mortgage with Tennessee Valley, they're not going to hold that loan. They're going to sell that loan into the secondary market. So then that would not be a portfolio loan because they're selling, excuse me, they're selling that loan into the secondary market. But if they hold it in their own portfolio, makes sense. It's a portfolio loan. All right. So we talked about different kinds of loans as well. Most loans are just amortizing loans. They're 10, 15 years, 30 years, whatever. But then there's other kinds of loans that might be an interest only loan. You may have interest only for a period of time, 5 or 10 years, and then there's a balloon due. Or you might have another loan that is interest only for a while, and then after that, then it would turn into a loan that is actually amortizing. And so that loan amortizes that, so for the first 10 years, it's interest only. And then for 20 more years, it's amortizing. So you actually pay back principal and interest during that, the second part of the loan, the 20 years. So if you have an interest rate that moves around or can move around, you've got an adjustable rate. So we talked about adjustable rates, and there's two pieces of an adjustable rate that makes up the interest rate. Does anybody remember what those pieces of that loan are? First one is the index, which is whatever you tie it to. So the index is the interest rate. It might be some treasury bonds. It might be there's a lot of different kinds. Cost of funds index. There's a lot of different indexes that it can be tied to.
Is
And
the
then
second,
the next, go ahead.
yeah, is the second part the margin?
Second part is the margin. Markup is the margin, exactly. So yeah, so the margin, it will always stay the same. If it's 1% or 2% or whatever it's going to be, it's the margin. The index is what can move. So if the index is 3 right now and your margin is 2, your interest rate is 5. If the index moves to 5%, your margin is still 2, even though it's on top of 5% now, so it's now a 7%. So yeah, exactly. Thank you, Will. All right, cool. Those are done. Those are done. All righty, the 3 C's of underwriting. Do we remember what the 3 C's of underwriting are?
Credit, collateral, and then I'm blanking on the third one.
Good. Anybody else? Credit. Yep, you got to have good credit. Collateral means the loan to value on the property. And the third one is how much money to make. That's the capacity to make the loan. So if you remember when we looked at the loan, the debt to income ratios, basically 30% of your gross monthly income can go towards your house payment. So that's your capacity. So if you make $5,000 a month, 30% of that is $1,500. Your capacity is for a $1,500 a month loan payment. If you don't make that much money, you can't borrow that much money. Or if you don't make that much money on a monthly basis, you can't borrow that much loan payment. It's just the way it goes. Good. All right, so speaking of that, we got debt ratios. So we've got 2 pieces of debt ratios. The first piece is what they call the front ratio, or the real estate ratio, or the, I don't know, whether mortgage ratio, whatever. It's basically what your house payment is compared to your income. So like that example I just said, you make $5,000 a month, 30% of that is your front ratio or your housing ratio, I think is one of the other terms that's been called several things, but that's 30% of that. So your housing ratio is 30%. And then you can have your total debt ratio, which is also considered your back ratio. And that can be, depending on the loan that you're getting, it can be, and I'm using 30 as a generic number. Actually, conventional is 28, FHA is 29. In my head, it's easier to calculate 30. But conventional on the back ratio, I think is 36, and I think FHA is 42, if I'm thinking correctly. So the one of the questions on the test is going to be, here's the breakdown of the monthly expenses and income, calculate the debt ratio. And it'll be the total debt ratio. Okay. Cool. We talked about mortgage bankers and how they sometimes don't have the money to actually make the loan of their own money. So they'll go set up a line of credit at a big lender. They'll borrow that money, then they'll use that money to make the loans and then sell those loans and pay back their line of credit. Do you remember what that line of credit is called? Anybody? Warehousing, a warehousing or a warehouse line of credit is basically, think about it from a wholesale level, because the lender is going to borrow money at wholesale, turn around and loan it out at retail to make the loan to the end borrower, and then they're going to turn around and sell that into the secondary market. Oh man, too late. I'm tired. Long day. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Okay. I got one of 8:51 at night. One of my mortgage guys is sending me information about one of our deals. So we're all working late. All right, we talked about that already. Laws of licensing. So in real estate, remember, the agent gets to be the special agent because it's special agency relationship only in that one particular transaction is the only thing that you're doing. So you would sign. I sent it around in class, and there was like a confirmation of agency disclosure. Basically, you're saying I'm working for either the buyer or the seller. And then we've got another, what kind of agency good we got that agreements. So we had, the other thing I passed around was a listing agreement. If you decide you're going to sell your property, you're going to execute a listing agreement with your real estate broker. If you decide you're going to buy a property, you're going to do what they call a buyer's broker agreement, where you actually sign up with a real estate broker to have them represent you. And then of course you'll have what they call a purchase and sale agreement. Those are basically the four big forms that you'll have: agency, listing agreement, buyer's agreement, and then the purchase and sale agreement if you're going to actually buy the property. All right, got that. RESPA. Anybody remember things about RESPA? It's called the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, and it has requirements that are given to the people that are involved in the transaction. So when a borrower goes in and sits down with the lender pulls their credit. Then at that point, some clocks start ticking. So they have to give a booklet out to the borrower. They have to do within 72 hours. That's a key thing to remember. Within 3 days, 72 hours, they have to have their disclosures out, their good faith estimates as to what the closing costs might be, and that type of thing. And then basically the closing statement. The closing statement is also part of the RESPA. It's required to be in a certain format through the title company. What is normally included in closing costs? Hopefully a few of you guys can remember a few of these things. Talk to me a little bit.
Isn't the realtor's percent already in the closing cost, like the 6% or the 3%?
Yeah, or whatever it is. Yeah. And typically that is paid on by the seller. The seller typically pays the real estate commissions. So if a buyer comes in, there's going to be costs that are specific to the buyer, and that's what I'm looking for. What are those costs going to be? What does he got to do? He's got to get a loan, so there's going to be costs associated with the loan, which are going to be what? What kind of things? You're going to get in a loan, so you got to get an appraisal. So you're going to have an appraisal fee. Any other ideas?
Like inspection and stuff as
Inspection
well?
inspection is not considered,
No.
and which is okay, but because the inspection becomes or is very important usually in the first 7 to 10 days of the contract.
Yeah.
So because during those first days of the contract, you're going to want to determine if there's a problem with the property and if you actually want to go through with the sale. So that's when you hire your inspector. It's a very, I'm glad you brought it up because it's very good because during that time you hire the inspector. And if the inspector finds a problem with the property, then you can go back to the seller and renegotiate the deal or back out of the deal. You have the option to do whatever you want to do and get your earnest money back because there's a defect in the property itself. So, but it's not considered part of closing, but it is a huge portion even before you get to closing. It's a huge part of the deal right up front to make sure
Right.
that there's not something screwy wrong with the property. Very good bringing that up, bud. But yeah, that's excellent. Then you got your closing costs are going to be loan fees. You're going to have to pay the county recording tax. You're going to have to pay a flood cert fee. You're going to have to pay title insurance. You're going to have to, there's just tons of fees that are all associated with closing costs. But understand that the inspection is not part of the closing costs. So that's really good.
Would the
Okay.
title also be a part of that or no? Like searching for the title for
Yes,
that?
absolutely. Yeah. So that usually there's it depends on the title company, but usually there's two pieces to it. The title, they'll do a search and they may have an attorney that actually does the search or a searcher that does the search. There's usually a fee for the search. And then the other thing that you're really concerned about is making sure there's title insurance. And title insurance protects the lender and title insurance protects you. So if you're going to buy a property, always make sure you get both lender and owner coverage because it protects you and the lender. Very important. So yeah, title is a big piece of it. But the recording fee, there's a mortgage tax, there's a transfer tax, they ding the heck out of you. But I mean, it's small percentages of the overall sales price. But I mean, if you're buying a $500,000 or $1 million property, it can be, a couple $1,000 worth of crap that you got to pay to the county just for the express, you know, excitement of owning a property. So, all right, cool. Legal and equitable title. Oh, let's go back to the inspection thing that Sam was talking about. So, when you do your original contract, it is contingent. Remember that word, contingent on several things. It's contingent on you getting financing. It's contingent on the appraisal. It's contingent on the inspection. If any of those come back wrong or off somewhere, then that contingency can be exercised and you can either back out or renegotiate the deal. So that a contingent contract is very important. The flip side of that is right now the market is so strong that you've got people coming in saying, I'm going to pay cash. It's not contingent on financing. It's not contingent on appraisal. And it's not contingent on inspection because they're having to bid against other people. And so when they're bidding against other people, the seller's most interested in something that's going to be a cash deal. They don't have to worry about an appraisal not working. They don't have to worry about them not qualifying for the loan. They don't excuse me, they don't have to worry about the inspection coming back and there being something wonky on it. So those are that flip side of the whole contingent thing is what's going on in the market right now. So yeah, very good, very good. So legal title is when you actually own the property. Once you go under contract and you have a signed contract, both all the parties are bound. Then you have what is called equitable title. We talked about that in class. Equitable title gives you, as the buyer, some control over the property, even though you technically don't have legal title yet, but the seller can't do things to that property or make things happen, you know, with the property or resell the property or whatever, because you have a binding legal agreement with them for the what they call equitable title. All right, good, good. Time value of money problems. You want to be able to use your time value of money keys on your calculator. Some of the stuff we did in class, we went through just kind of review from the 30/20 class or the 3000 class, but we had those available so that you could or talked about those and went over those on the PowerPoint so you could just kind of practice on those. So if you are going to compound your interest, how does it affect if you do daily, monthly, every 6 months, once a year when you're compounding? What is going to give you the highest return?
Daily.
Good. Yep, the sooner you can get it back in there working and reinvested, that's the best thing you can do. Cool. All right, so this one is solving for a present value. All right, remember the relationship with bonds and how that works. So if the value of a bond, think about that. If interest rates are going to fall, what happens with the value of a bond or the value of a present value in a problem you're doing? If interest rates are dropping, what typically happens? Remember that? It's basically inverse. So if you buy a bond at $1,000 with a 10% yield and the market changes to where it's requiring a 12% yield, the value of that bond is going to go down. So the value of the bond and the interest rate always act inversely. So if the rate is going up, the value of the bond goes down. If the rate is going down, the value of the bond is going up. Did you guys hear about Silicon Valley Bank that went out of business a week or two ago? Did we talk about that in class at all? You heard about that? Okay, so here's what they did. They had a whole bunch of government treasuries that they had purchased when the interest rates are like 1.5%. So let's just to say par value was $1,000 at 1.5%. Now the interest rates are 4.5%. So that $1,000 bond is not worth $1,000 anymore. It's worth 800 bucks because of the yield is at 4.5%. So then they had a bunch of people that came in. Now it's a good investment, liquid investment, right? Because you can always get it liquidated within a day, real liquid investment. But the problem is they had a bunch of people come in and want their money out of their bank. Now all of a sudden they got to sell their $1,000 bond for 800 bucks and they're going to lose money. And so they went in, that's how they became insolvent because they had to liquidate investments. And so what the Fed did is they went in and basically bailed them out and said, okay, we're going to give you $1,000 for your $1,000 bond, even though today it's only worth 800 bucks. And the Fed's going to basically eat the interest that's going to give, because at some point in the future, when that bond matures, it's worth 1,000 bucks again. But if you sell it today, it's only worth 800. I'm making up numbers, but it's pretty close. You see what I'm saying? So by them being illiquid, and having to sell at a loss, their liquidity killed them, and they couldn't have. They didn't. They could. If you continue to sell at a loss, at some point you're going to run out of money and not be able to pay all your depositors. So they basically froze the assets. The Fed came in, gave them the money against their bonds. I mean, it's the most liquid investment you could have. But the problem is that they were just not doing well when it came to the interest rate risk, because the interest rate risk, when if you remember back to bonds, interest rate risk is one of the things it'll kill you. It's one of the problems with a bond. So yeah, that's basically what happened. So anyway, so as present value falls, interest rates go up, interest rates go down, present value goes up. So they act inversely. All right, cool. There, just go back and review effective borrowing cost, and then lenders yield. We did a couple problems just this last class on those two. Know how to put money into the calculator and calculate a loan, what a loan payment is. On an interest-only mortgage, you only pay interest every month, so you don't have to run it through the time value of money keys. You just take the interest rate, multiply it out, and divide it by 12. That gives you a monthly payment on an interest-only loan. Okay, lender's yield. We got that. We talked about that. One of the things we talked about with lender's yield and effective borrowing costs was when a borrower borrows the money, they pay all those fees up front. Okay. If they pay the loan off early, do you remember what we talked about? Does that make the effective borrowing cost go higher or lower? So remember, they paid all those fees up front, and they were normally going to pay the amortization, or the effective borrowing cost was going to be out over 30 years. And if you shorten that time period and pay off the loan earlier, what's that going to do to your effective borrowing cost? Higher or lower?
Higher.
Right. You're right.
But the lender's yield is less though, right?
No, the lender's yield would also be higher.
Oh, it'd still be higher.
They've got to move together. Yeah, because they still earned all those fees. They get a shorter time. They get all their money back in a shorter time frame plus the fees. So it's a higher yield for them and a higher cost for the borrower.
I guess I'm thinking if they didn't sell off the loan and they kept it in their portfolio,
Right. And
yeah,
it
then
still would be. It still would
it
be
still
because
would
they
be.
can turn around, reuse the money that's from that loan, turn
Right.
around and charge new fees all over again. So yeah, it's just going to make it higher return for them.
Right.
Yeah, lenders love it when you refinance. They'd love you to refinance about every 2 or 3 years if you wouldn't mind. Cost you a ton of money, but yeah, they like it. That's why we have all the debt. That's what. Oh, let us help you borrow money for your car. Let us help you borrow money for your student loans. Let us help you borrow money on your credit card. That's how they make money. They got to loan their money, or they don't make any money. So crazy. All right. So on also on figuring out time value of money again, we on you know how to do a mortgage, or to figure out, here's the loan term, here's the interest rate, calculate what the payment's going to be, and then figure out, also we went over in class on how to figure out what a how to figure out what the future value is after you make 10 payments or 30 payments or whatever. Just kind of review that as well. Okay, I'm kind of hopping around here a little bit on these last ones. Net present value. Talked about that a little bit. IRR. So IRR is basically the return of the investment. So the investment yield and the IRR are basically the same thing. All right. One of the things Truth in Lending under RESPA requires that the lender has to disclose the effective borrower's cost, but they call it the APR, the annual percentage rate, which is another name for effective borrowing cost. All righty, this one here, this last problem here, assume a property is priced at a certain price. It gives you cash flows, and you use your cash flow key on your finance calculator to figure out what your net present value is. And it gives you the discount rate. All right, that's pretty much it. 40 questions plus some extra credit on the exam. And we pretty much just went over about 95% of it. So any questions or comments, anything we need to talk about or do?
I think I'm good.
Okay. Very good. Anybody else, guys?
No, I'm good. Thank you for having this.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad everybody could be here. I did record it, so next thing I'm going to do is I'll post a link in Canvas that has the link. Probably just put it in my YouTube and just post the link there for so you can go back if you want to listen to it again. I know some people came in a little bit late and didn't catch the first part, so instead of repeating it all, I'm just going to do that since it's recorded. So appreciate you guys being here. We actually turned out a little better than I was thinking we were going to. I knew one person was not going to be here because they're working, so we got pretty good amount here. So all right, well, appreciate it, guys. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow night at 5:30.
You guys.
All right, good night.